Good morning, and thanks to my hosts, Professors George and Wilson, and the team at the James Madison program. I appreciate the opportunity to join the discussion of the important subject of academic freedom, on which they have provided admirable leadership. I hope the remarks offered here may advance the work they so ably undertake by casting a backward glance in order to record how we've come to this moment of controversy and to identify a foothold on which we may discover a foundation that can serve beyond the present generation. The original Kalven Report, which we hold in review, characterizes the university as dual entity, the one living within itself the life of unimpaired inquiry, the other living in the world beyond as a corporate citizen. That very sensible observation nevertheless opened a very large can of worms, for it left it entirely a matter of discretion just what forms of corporate responsibility legitimately burden the university. That is doubtless the reason George Stigler held out for the simpler formulation that says, in effect, the university as corporate citizen must respect its lawful obligations, but it should in no way foster any moral or political values. But the question raised in this manner is precisely whether there actually is a Caesar's wife posture available to the university. To understand the nature of this dilemma, I turn to the more recently issued Chicago statement that addresses a similar issue. The Chicago statement also forswears any and all inhibition upon robust inquiry and discussion. Nevertheless, it notes that there might arise such conduct and expression as is incompatible with the functioning of the university. But it dismisses that observation as a minor cavil, tacitly noting that the university as an institution must make that decision for itself, while yet affirming that individual members of the university community are free to decide for themselves whether to applaud or contest ideas and behaviors. However, there's nowhere to be found a mechanism whereby these two discretionary and autonomous functions shall necessarily be harmonized or at least coordinated. Hence, the question remains, as in the Kalven Report, just how far the writ of open inquiry runs in the face of corporate imperatives. These questions regularly recur. The Chicago statement, perhaps knowingly, underscores this point by framing its discussion as recurring throughout its history roughly once every 30 years or every generation. It would seem that the issue will not go away. What is at stake, therefore, is less the formal question of the conditions of free inquiry than the far more practical question of the apt response to demands. The notable capitulations of university administrators to threaten an actual violence in the 1960s amply illustrated how thin is the shield of intellectual independence. But universities themselves cultivate the invasions of their independence through careless assumption of the power to direct the larger course of society, which is to say, they regard themselves as educating the society and not merely the community members within the universities. And that is particularly relevant with respect to the development of the anti-racism crusade. Before the current rage emerged, I anticipated its ill effects with an analysis of university responses to what in that age of innocence was called political correctness. In the process, I even introduced the term inclusion in 2007 in a bootless effort to oppose the concept of the university to diversity. I failed in that endeavor for the sufficient reason that the universities were already well in the thrall of the next generational challenge to intellectual independence. Universities set the tone for all public and corporate practice in the case of affirmative action, preferences, and diversity. For that reason, I present the special case of the university. Everyone in higher education is first engaged in and committed to serving the cause of robust intellectual development, even when some lose sight of that goal in the course of pursuing policy. Here, I refocus university admissions on the core pursuit of truth in circumstances of open-ended inquiry. I assume that informed observers recognize the intrinsic connection between the mission of the university and the character of the community such a mission will foster. We should expect community members, students, and faculty from a broad range of backgrounds, each contributing in special ways to fuel open-ended inquiry. I raise the question, however, whether this fundamental assumption is adequately expressed in the language we employ when describing our work in higher education. In a word, Equity has banished fairness, which alone ever gave meaning to the term equity. Would it not be good to make clear that whatever these terms mean, they must be understood in relation to the core mission of higher education? I at least think that is so. For that reason, I draw out the mind picture of the university that pursues truth in circumstances of open-ended inquiry. It is certainly such an one as attracts the participation of able and engaged students and faculty recognized for their intellectual potential before they're characterized by their respective religious, racial, ethnic, gender, or similar backgrounds. Moreover, it is critical that exertions be undertaken to build a broadly constituted university in the interest of providing the most favorable opportunity to realize the core mission. Success in the pursuit of truth hinges on attracting the most able seekers, and nothing, no element of background, nor extraneous identification, should interfere with making a clear commitment to attracting such seekers. Therefore, I distinguish the terms we use, multiculturalism, diversity, inclusion, with an eye to underscoring the goal we have in mind, which is to build common participation in and appreciation for the life of the mind and the benefits of learning. Therefore, I privilege the language of inclusion above the other terms as clearer in effect and intention. And similarly, I urge that we avoid over-reliance upon non-academic staff to implement these principles, but turn instead to persons who are capable of showing due deference and respect for the purpose of the university. Most importantly, though, we should replace separationist policies with policies that integrate community members and that rely upon self-motivation as the first principle of selection. Nothing is more important than to communicate to community members and prospective community members that it is they and not university officers who determine their own fates. And this is where I would end if I had no more to say than that which emerges from appraising the Kalven Report and the subsequent Chicago statement. But there is a larger work to be done. And in the remarks I prepared on this occasion, I have gone at greater length into the symphony and not just the sonata, discussing how we got to be in this circumstance and what are the required steps we might take to emerge from it, if not unscathed, at least restored. And I trust in the ensuing conversation, some of these observations can play a role in amplifying the general sentiments that are to be expressed on this occasion. And I thank you very much.